Ask anyone who has ridden thousands of loaded miles across America what they carry in their head, and they won't hand you a list of scenic climbs. They will tell you about the other list, the descents where you crested the summit, looked down at the ribbon of asphalt dropping into empty space, and realized within 2 miles that your brakes were no longer slowing you down. The descents where the smell of cooked resin and boiling hydraulic fluid hits your nose, where your fingers lock around the levers in a death grip, and where you realize gravity doesn't care how light your carbon frame is. Nobody gave you this list when you bought your first bike. You built it the hard way. A boiling rotor at mile 4, a front wheel shimmy at 45 miles per hour on a guardrail-less shelf, or the sound of an inner tube literally exploding from rim heat. These are the moments that move a mountain pass onto your permanent avoid list. Tonight, we are ranking 10 mountain descents in the United States from dangerous to the single worst piece of downhill asphalt in America. And I'm not giving you a lazy list of famous tourist passes. We went into the actual gradient numbers, the specific hairpins where search and rescue gets called, the brake temperatures, and the physics of why a 20-pound bike loaded with 30 pounds of gear becomes a runaway missile. And sitting at number 1 is a road where the state literally bans downhill riders from using their brakes continuously because the tarmac is so steep, hydraulic fluid boils before you reach the 3rd switchback. Let's earn our way to it. We start in the Northeast because steep doesn't need the Rockies to teach you a lesson. Mount Equinox is the teacher. A privately owned paved toll road climbing nearly 200 feet over just 2 miles, serving up sustained pitches between 12 and 16%. On paper, riders coming from the flatlands look at the short mileage and think it's an afternoon workout. That's the trap. On a short, steep descent, you don't have time to let your rotors breathe. You drop into the trees, and the road immediately forces you onto the levers. Rim brake riders find their brake tracks burning hot within 90 seconds, and modern disc rotors turn purple before the midpoint. The cost of Mount Equinox is the education. It's where a rookie cyclist learns that clamping down on both brakes out of fear isn't safety, it's the exact mechanism that glazes your pads and leaves you rolling free into a tree. Out in the eastern Sierra, Onion Valley Road climbs out of the Owens Valley Desert straight up into the jagged rock behind Independence. It drops over 5,000 feet in roughly 12 miles, with long, unrelenting 9 to 11% grades. But the weapon here isn't just the slope, it's the desert heat. When you start down Onion Valley on a summer afternoon, you are descending from cool mountain air into a 100-degree thermal wall rising from the desert floor. Your brakes aren't radiating heat into cool air, they are trying to shed 400-degree friction into a blast furnace. Riders describe the brake levers slowly going soft under their fingers as the mineral oil expands and boils in the calipers. The cost of Onion Valley is ambient physics. The mountain robs your cooling efficiency first, and then it asks how long your hands can hold the bars on 10% grades. If you descend this road, you pulse your brakes, you sit up to catch the wind, and you never ride the pads. Down in northern Georgia, Brassdown Bald holds the title of the steepest paved half-mile in the eastern United States. The final stretch hits a brutal 20% gradient, and the road leading down is narrow, shadowed, and damp. This isn't a long mountain descent like the West Coast, it's an immediate wall. At 20%, a cyclist doesn't gently roll, gravity accelerates you from 0 to 35 mph in less than 4 seconds. If you touch the brakes too hard on wet mountain leaves, the front wheel washes out instantly. If you don't touch them, the tight 90-degree bends at the bottom will launch you over the edge. The cost of Brassdown Bald is zero margin. Short, violent, and utterly unforgiving to anyone who thought the South only had rolling hills. Quick pit stop before we head into the monsters. If this list has already reminded you of a descent where your hands were shaking at the bottom, do me a favor and hit subscribe. It's free, and unlike your rear brake pad on a 15% grade, it will never fade when you need it most. Now we enter the high country. Loveland Pass crests at 11,990 feet, dropping down to Interstate 70 on switchbacks that sit far above the tree line. Truckers fear this pass because hazardous materials are banned from the Eisenhower Tunnel and forced up here. For a cyclist, that means you are sharing narrow, guardrail-less shelf drops with commercial fuel tankers while managing 7% grades in freezing mountain crosswinds. Up at 12,000 feet, the wind comes over the Continental Divide sideways. A gust catching your front aero wheel at 40 mph will push your bike 2 feet across the lane straight into the path of an oncoming semi. The cost of Loveland Pass is total exposure. It takes high speed, cold-numbed fingers that can barely pull the levers, and adds 80,000 pound trucks right at your shoulder. Number 6 is the road that literally banned bicycles on the descent for decades. Mount Washington averages 12% over 6 miles, with sections pushing 18 to 22%, combined with a notorious stretch of unpaved gravel right in the middle. The race organizers famously mandate that riders cannot simply ride down after the summit finish without strict inspection. In the days of rim brakes, inner tubes exploded on this mountain from sheer rim heat like gunshots. With modern disc brakes, rotors warp until they scrape the frame. The cost of Mount Washington is relentless friction. There is not a single flat pedal stroke for nearly 8 miles. If you stop feathering the brakes, you hit 60 mph in seconds. If you keep feathering them, your braking system destroys itself. Pikes Peak climbs to 115 feet, and the descent covers 19 miles of wide, deceptive asphalt. It makes the top 5 because it is the only road in the country with a mandatory thermal checkpoint halfway down. Park rangers stand in the road with infrared thermometers, stopping cars whose brake rotors exceed 300 degrees. Cyclists don't get a warning beep from a dashboard. They find out their brakes are cooked when the lever pulls all the way to the handlebar tape. The sheer duration is what kills. 19 miles of high-speed descending means your hands, forearms, and caliper seals are under continuous load for over 40 minutes. The cost of Pikes Peak is endurance. A descent so long that mechanical fatigue and mental fatigue arrive at the exact same mile marker. Teton Pass connects Jackson Hole to Idaho, dropping off the summit at sustained 10% pitches. This road has eaten so many heavy vehicle brakes that the state had to install aircraft carrier arrestor nets on the runaway ramps. For a cyclist, the speed builds so fast on the upper curves that cars struggle to pass safely, creating a pressure cooker where drivers tailgate riders descending at highway speeds. Add the grooves cut into the asphalt for winter traction, and your 28mm tires will track and wobble violently right as you need maximum stability to brake for the lower hairpins. The cost of Teton Pass is the trap of speed. It seduces you into going 50 mph until you realize the stopping distance on a 10% pitch is 3 times longer than you calculate. Number 3 is the road where a brake mistake has nothing to stop you but 3,000 feet of thin air. U.S. Route 550 between Ouray and Silverton is carved directly into the sheer canyon wall. Sustained 8 to 9% drops, blind switchbacks, and miles of road with 0 guardrails. There is no gravel runoff. There is no shoulder. There is just the white line, 3 inches of asphalt, and a vertical drop to the river below. When descending into Ouray, you are negotiating narrow lanes with tourist RVs hugging the center line, leaving you riding the lip of the abyss. The cost of Red Mountain Pass is psychological terror. A minor mechanical slip on any other hill leaves you in a ditch. Here, the safety net was removed when they blasted the rock in the 1880s. The runner-up is the longest continuous downhill paved road on Earth. From the volcanic summit of Halakala down to the Pacific Ocean, you lose 10,000 feet of elevation over 36 continuous miles. It holds a grim record in bicycle tourism. Multiple commercial tour fatalities led to strict county bans on unguided downhill bike operations. You start in freezing fog at the summit and descend through microclimates into tropical rain. Your wet pads grind away against carbon rims or disc rotors, wearing down to bare metal halfway down the mountain. The cost of Hala Kala is attrition. 36 miles without a single climb to rest your hands or let your braking system cool down. The most feared downhill on two wheels in America is the highest paved road on the continent. Mount Blue Sky climbs to 130 feet. The road surface on the upper 5 miles is fractured by permafrost heaves, massive cracks, frost humps, and loose scree that turn the descent into a high-altitude minefield. Start at the top. At 14,000 feet, the cold freezes your extremities so badly that you lose the tactile feel of how hard you are squeezing the brake levers. The road drops through switchbacks with crumbling edges, no barriers, and sudden 50 mph crosswinds that blast across the tundra. If you brake over the frost heaves, your tires lose traction and bounce into the air. If you don't brake, the approaching hairpin forces you into a slide on loose gravel. What does Mount Blue Sky cost a cyclist? Everything this entire list covered, stacked into one fractured road above the clouds. The altitude of Pikes Peak, the exposure of Red Mountain, and the violent frost cracks that can snap a carbon fork in half. Every list has a worst. The highest road in America earned it. So that's the map. From a steep toll road in Vermont that humbles your confidence, to the roof of the continent where gravity and permafrost wait for your front wheel. And notice the pattern the whole list kept whispering. Gravity never loses an argument. The cyclist who gets into trouble on a mountain descent isn't the slow rider. It's the one who assumed their equipment was invincible, ignored the smell of hot pads, and forgot to check their gear at the summit. Now it's your turn. Drop the descent that taught you respect in the comments below the hill where your hands locked up or your brake pads wore down to the backing plate. And if this video earned a spot in the route you carry in your head, hit subscribe. Until next time. Keep the rubber side down, respect the grade, and check your pads before the summit drops out from under you.